Welcome back, and before going on to the break, Shahzad alluded to sort of the conversation and he wanted to share some statistics about the antimicrobial resistance, and I do have my own set of research, and that poses a significant threat because the statistics are staggering, and that is according to United Nations World Health Organization. Antimicrobial resistance is responsible for 1.27 million global deaths in 2019, and it has contributed to 4.95 million deaths, almost approximately 5 million deaths. That is a very, very staggering development. How to make sure that we develop the right base of the tools and sets for the proper diagnosis, so that there is no need to prescribe the antibiotics in the first place, and how to make sure the prescription, which is very much common, self-medication, which is very much common within the Pakistan. Because medicines are easily available over the counters. How can we curb this phenomena? Unless we do that, we will keep on seeing people will self-medicate, and this phenomena, this monsters that we are raising in our clinics, in our homes, it will continue to rise and gnaw at our inability to curb it.
So exactly, ladies and gentlemen, in addition to this, sharing the facts and figures from CDC, which is the Center for Disease Control as well, they say that 50% of the primary care where I mentioned, but 30% of them were being overprescribed when they weren't even needed. So imagine, and then there was this data available which said that imagine that for a lot of people who actually go in, for example, if you are to use antibiotics, and that too for a disease which can probably be fatal. Now imagine they say that that for all of these viruses that we use, antibiotics might not be the solution. People have been prescribed with broad spectrum antibiotics where they were required to only have the narrow spectrum as well. But let's build up this conversation. We have a legit gentleman over here. We are very lucky that we've been joined by Dr. Saab over here in the studios as well. Dr. Saab, assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for joining us. Wonderful to have you over here.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much for having me as well. Same.
Right. And we are joined by Dr. Uzair Javed. He's once again on our show, and he will delve into why in these cold and dry winters, particularly in Islamabad and Rawalpindi, because it has not received rain, which is very, very anomalous behavior of the weather, how we are exposed to so many ills of the fever, the dry cough and the cold. Dr. Saab, how can we curb the menace of antimicrobial resistance? Because we are watching it is a phenomena, a monster that is being nurtured in our homes, in our clinics, through the not the correct diagnosis in the first place.
Well, just coming to the point, before I would like to share a very funny thing which I came across today, 2 days ago, I think. A man came to me and he said that, Doctor, my little child, he was not feeling very well. Okay. I went to a quack and he gave me certain medications. And after that, what happened? He said that child recovered. Luckily, he recovered. And after that, what happened was all other children, they were also suffering from similar symptoms. So what I did, I just gave them all the same medication which was given to me by that quack. And it came to my surprise that, oh, this is something which is going on across Pakistan, and we don't even know at which level. True. Because the data which we have is very much limited. True. You even mentioned that 4.5 million people have died due to the antibiotic overuse are resistant.
True.
Well, this number 4.5 million, it is actually the people who have died due to the complications which have been associated to the resistant. And the exact number which you mentioned before that was 1.27 million. That number by WHO is the exact number in 2019 which killed directly due to the antimicrobial resistance.
Exactly. So, we certainly do know the scares of the overprescribing of the antibiotics as well. But let's come down to this. Now, imagine, Hajra alluded to it as well. The weather is cold and dry this time around as well. There's no rain. People come with a lot of cough, chest congestion, ear infection, sinuses. There are multiple issues. But what the research tells us is that the antibiotics should be used for pneumonia or life-threatening conditions, but cannot fight infections caused by viruses.
Exactly.
So imagine every time that we have a viral, we go to a doctor, Doctor, menu ki ho gaya? Tenu viral ho gaya. Now viral is something which nobody knows what it is.
Exactly.
But still we are prescribing antibiotics. So you as a doctor, what would you say about that?
Well, there are certain things. Antibiotics, they are basically to treat the secondary infections. Okay. A person when comes to us, it is not always the virus. The way you just said, it is dryness and that all. It is sometimes the allergy. Sometimes people are allergic to this dry season,
Yep.
the dust particle, the pollens. In Islamabad, you know, the climate is so good. Some people just enjoy it, cherish it, and while others, they are always sneezing and sneezing because they're allergic to the pollens. So there is a malpractice that people, when they do come with allergic rhinitis or allergic pharyngitis, what happens? They come across taking the antibiotics. So this is a malpractice which we all should be coping with. And there is another thing. I've seen certain people who take medications which are a very strong, you know, there is certain hierarchy.
The potency of the medication.
Yes, there is certain hierarchy in prescribing the antibiotics. So there are certain guidelines. In Pakistan, we usually go with the UK guidelines. Those are the nice guidelines. And they tell us to go with step by step. For example, let me just give you a little very much example. If we have got, I'm very fond of hunting, so let's go in that way. If we want to hunt for a sparrow, and we can use the air gun, and we can also use the M16 as well to kill that similar sparrow. So if we have got a sparrow, we want to kill it, we use the M16. Now what are we going to do when we came across a lion?
True.
So I think there is no one fit solution. But Dr. Saab, while I was doing my research and I came across a very interesting assertion on the World Health Organization page, and it talked about how there's a drug resistance against the medicines for neglected tropical diseases. Now what exactly does this mean, and how does the antimicrobial resistance come into the equation? What is the nexus with it? Please explain it to us.
Well, it is very simple, but it's very logical. You'll just get to know about that. The thing is that when we prescribe a certain medication to a patient, what happens is that that patient goes, the symptoms just, they are relieved. And the patient says, okay, I took the medication and in 2 days or 3 days, I was very well and I left the medication. Now what happens, he did not take the complete prescription according to the prescription which was prescribed to him. So what happens that is, we just slap the bacteria and bacteria becomes able to cope with that slab. Okay, it is not killed by the slab. So in order to kill that bacteria, we have to go to follow the complete regime. That is 5 days for certain medications, and some in cases it is 7 days.
Exactly, which is why I think in connection to this is one element or two elements which I would want to talk, because it was very hard for me to kind of understand. Now it says that prescribing antibiotics for disorders not caused by bacteria can actually result in colonization or contamination rather than the infection itself, number one. Number two, it says, so if microbes have produced antibiotics for millennia, right? And they say, though, so if resistance is the inevitable consequence of antibiotic usage, so why did it become an issue for microbes itself?
Well, there are certain medications which are very broad spectrum. Some antibiotics, they have the impact or potency to kill other microbes as well. When we call about the antimicrobial resistance, it includes certain things. It includes the viruses, it includes the fungi and the bacteria. So these all things, along with some other things, are the microbes. What happens is that antimicrobes are not only the antibiotics. All antibiotics are not antimicrobials. But all antimicrobials
are antibiotics. It's confusing, but let's talk. See, that's the science bit of it. Now, let's come down to how we overprescribe them. Now, imagine that I have friends over here inside this building right now who, for example, one day of flu, they'll be like, oh, you know, I've started my antibiotics. So there's a lot of self-prescribing medication. Not just that. Number two, Doctor Saab ke haath mein shifa bahut hai. You know, so everybody's running their own business. So, you know, antibiotics, quick fix solution. You never know whether the disease went away, whether the virus went away or not. But because you start to feel better, you're like, okay, I think Doctor Saab ke haath mein shifa bahut hai. So how do you think that we can curb the menace of overprescribing, you know, antibiotics?
Well, this is a very important thing to put the light on. I would request all the colleagues and all the clinicians and practitioners listening to me right now that please stick to the hierarchy, stick to the guidelines which have been given to us. Don't just overprescribe the things. There is a thing which you just said that I would just, in that case, I would just say if a person comes to us with flu, in my practice, I just tell him that, okay, if you're going to take medication, you'll recover in 1 week. And if you're not going to take the medication, you'll recover in 7 days.
Right, and Dr. Uzair,
because it is viral and it is allergic, it will go on its own. You don't need to take antibiotics all the time.
But something, you know, because you cannot sleep at night, you know, your noke's all choked, you know, you cannot breathe.
For that, there are other medications. If the person is anti-allergic, we can give him anti-allergic, antihistamines. antibiotic is not always the solution. It is a malpractice that we just...
But Dr. Uzair, very quickly, because we have very short time to wrap up this segment, and I would like to ask you, how can we develop a people-centered approach to combat the antimicrobial resistance, and obviously equitable access towards number one, quality diagnosis, and number two, the quality access, because you mentioned the quacks, right? And you cannot deny the fact that a lot of people, even within the urban centers, they go to quacks.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know because it might not be that much expensive as the normal medicine is, modern medicine is, and we do see that antimicrobial resistance is also reversing the gains that we had in the Western medicine, right? How to curb this phenomena, and do you feel that there should be an aggressive crackdown on these quacks or spiritual, fake faith healers, sorry. So
yes, I very much agree with you. There must be a very aggressive and strong action against all the fake things, because fakeness is becoming the new modernization. So let's just put this fakeness away and cure and cope and just get all those quacks who are just using these antibiotics over the large scale, which is certainly deteriorating the public health.
And also very quickly, because there is this approach within the World Health Organization, and it talks about that how there should be a unifying approach to combat the antimicrobial resistance, which should not just be for the human system, right? It should be for our ecosystem, for the flora and fauna, because the health of the entire is interconnected. How to develop that very unifying approach to deal or combat this problem?
And how do you see the post-antibiotic world?
Let's just go to the first question first, then I'll answer the second one. Well, for that, I think there must be awareness sessions. The way you have taken the initiative, I would appreciate PTV Word for this.
Thank you so much.
This is a session, if people are listening to it, I'm very much sure that people will think about taking the medications in certain ways, the way they are just using that. So awareness session is the first thing. And the way you mentioned the plants, they are also there are also antibiotics for them as well. There are certain level of medications, but yes, we can call them antimicrobials. So this whole ecosystem needs to evolve. And the evolving thing is we can evolve by learning. So the learning sessions, the awareness sessions, that are going to matter a lot.
And we need to learn quite a lot. So imagine just yesterday I went for an ultrasound of my liver. While I was, kind of undergoing that ultrasound, I asked Dr. Saib, I was like, how many people in Pakistan live with fatty liver? He goes like almost 70 to 80% people live with fatty liver. So imagine that the kind of food intake that we are taking, imagine that, the sedentary lifestyles that we have. I think everybody needs to kind of have more awareness about their health and what we need to do. But thank you so much, Dr. Uzair.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to be in conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And now we will move on to very interesting news, and that is that how a real gold medal from 1904 Olympics sells for $545.371 dollars at the auction. A gold medal from the 1905 St. Louis Olympics, the first games held in the US, sold for rupees 545,371 at an auction. At the medal was awarded to American Fred Skule for the 110-meter hurdles, and made is entirely of the gold and includes its original ribbon and leather case. This was also the first Olympics where gold medals were awarded. However, 1904 games were marked by controversy and were moved from Chicago to St. Louis due to the protest by the organizers of the World Fair. Of the approximately 100 gold medals awarded, many are lost or in the private collections, making them exceedingly rare. And I still am unable to grapple the very complex sort of tendencies of the people to spend money on very, I would call them very abnormal things.
But it's still a gold medal. Imagine somebody investing $6 million on a duct taped banana and then eating it later on as well. So I think I'm going to agree with Hajra, what she has spoken about. Imagine not just that, just a bare white canvas was sold for somewhere around $10 million or $12 million.
Oh my God.
So I don't know what people are trying to do.
People, right? And why don't they spend money on a better things to do? But anyway,
exactly. But yeah, while we are at it, imagine that, this is the kind of news that we will hear about China, we'll hear about United States of America and whatnot. But imagine, ladies and gentlemen, that this is something which obviously I never thought can actually be reality, but here it is. China-based space transportation firm has successfully tested its supersonic jet named Yunxing. The jet, powered by a ramjet engine utilizing oxygen from the air, achieves remarkable speed and efficiency and is capable of traveling at 3,040 miles per hour and that to, imagine, ladies and gentlemen, that we will be able to reach from Karachi to Lahore in 13 minutes. I don't know whether I would want to be on board that plane or not.
Why not?
I mean, I really do not want to be that fast in my life.
Why not? Why not? I mean, if it's just saving your time, I think I would want that same plane to be here in Islamabad where I could reach my office in 13 minutes. That's quite a rare phenomenon, but we will witness that because you never know. You can never make common sense when you're predicting the future. But also when we are talking about the present, and I think Shahzad will also agree that when we were kids, our childhood was dominated by the play-based childhoods. We used to play a lot of outdoor games, right? True. And now when we see our kids growing up, so there is a total transition towards these mobile games-based childhood and how it is impacting their mental health and how are they navigating on those digital spaces, because a lot of young kids, they're glued to the screen. And we will also hinge the conversation around all of these YouTube cartoons, for example, Coco Melon, for example, all of these creations, how are they impacting our kids' health? And we see that there was a surge in how parents used to give them the mobile because they would not create any fuss. But are there such broader ramifications that for a short time discomfort or the comfort, you are, ruining the mental health of the kids? How to delve further into it? We are very glad that we have been joined by one of the best psychologists that I would say, and he is very passionate about talking about the mental health, that too of the infants. So I'm very glad that we have been joined by Professor Dr. Mowadat Rana. He's a consultant psychiatrist. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you for asking.
So it's always wonderful to have you over here. You know, when we got to know that you're coming, obviously we're very relaxed about the subject itself as well. But I'll let Hajra take the lead, and then we'll come down towards the infant mental health as well.
Yes. So I would like to start our conversation. Like I mentioned that we had there's a loss of the play-based childhood, right? Because we were playing in the streets, and I think that also developed a lot of social interactions because we know how to deal with the conflicts that were happening, the ladaiyan, choti-moti ladaiyan that were happening, right? And it creates our social interactive skills. But now the kids, there's a transition towards this phone-based childhood. How's impacting the mental health of the infants and toddlers?
Well, you see, let me highlight to you that the seeds of bad mental health actually are sown much earlier than the time that we offer them our first introduction of a smartphone to a child. Actually, that springs out from our lack of skills of how to bring up a child, how to comfort and console a child. Here is this young girl with her first baby at the age of 20. She's stuck on the 13th floor in some building in Islamabad or Karachi or Lahore, you see, and there's nobody around her, and she has this inconsolable child. What does she do? Who told her how to console this crying baby? Nobody.
Yeah.
And remember, we've all heard this story of, or the statement, it takes a village to raise a child.
Absolutely.
So where is this village? She's a loner, you know. Even the husband says, apne bachche ko pakdo ro raha hai.
Absolutely.
You see, even the husband is not ready to participate in the process, and thank God he's not participating because he is equally unskilled. So the issue is that, you see, we do not really train to become parents. You see, to drive the car that you are unable to drive in 13 minutes to PTV requires you to have a license to drive a car. But which license do you have to actually raise a child?
Yeah, the only license that, okay, our parents did it, so we are going to do it too. I think that's the only...
For granted.
That's the license. Now, it's therefore, I think we need to understand that many of the diseases that you were talking to Dr. Saab, including the lowered immunity that we have, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, ischemic heart disease, you'd be surprised to note that the seeds of these diseases are not sown only in the beef burger that you eat. They are actually sown in the intrauterine life of a child.
True.
It is the environment in the womb of a mother that starts to decide which diseases this child is going to develop later on.
True.
So imagine how much we concentrate on the nutrition of this lady, saying, oh, she's becoming a mother, you know, feed her this, feed her that, she's the royalty suddenly, panjiri, and so on and so forth. So you see, you give her the best diet, you try and give her a very good environment, but we completely forget that a child while in the intrauterine life does not require proteins, fats, vitamins and carbohydrates, he or she also requires a certain degree of mental health conservation.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, a bad mental health of a mother who has a baby in the womb is going to influence the mental health subsequently and the physical health in the years to come.
Yeah, so I think these are the prenatal factors, I think, which we have touched upon as well. But not just that, you know, there are others in connection to that. Because you've touched upon it very slightly, I would want you to kind of elaborate on that. But then there's substance use, there's, you know, malnutrition as well, then there's postnatal factors. So how do you think all of these factors contribute towards, the mental illnesses that we speak about, what we see in elderly people, or the ischemic heart disease that you just pointed out towards?
You see, so obviously the seeds are sown inside the uterus, but then once the child is brought up, in the first 1,000 days of life, we call it 0 to 3 or the first 1,000 days, in that adverse childhood experiences, adversities, abuse of various kind, whether that is emotional abuse, whether that is physical abuse and even sexual abuse.
Sir, is the child able to recognize that?
No, but the mind does.
Okay. So the mind is working.
Yes, absolutely. He cannot make a meaning out of it. That makes it doubly dangerous.
All right.
Right. But Dr. Rana, we will also like to explore that, like you mentioned, we are not taught parenting. It is something that is taken for granted. It is something that is very genetic, and mothers or young mothers, they are skilled to do so, right? And let's dissect this, concept which is very prevalent within the South Asian communities. And also I see one of the phenomena within the younger mothers is the anxiety of overdoing things for their children, right, or for the infants or the toddlers. Do you believe that we are raising a mentally strong kids in the first place when we are overdoing things for them?
We're not. I think we are producing a set of children who we raise in a bubble.
Okay.
On this very forum of the morning show, we have discussed that overprotective
Yes.
child rearing, non-exposure to risk, non-exposure to hard realities of life all through childhood. And this process has to start once a mother starts to get a confidence that her child rearing is only part of or one of the things that a child requires, the child rearing by a mother. But a child also requires uncles, aunts, khala, chachi, chacha, mamu, nana, dada, nani, dadi. Even there's a role that is played by your neighbors in the upbringing of that child. And you were talking about antibiotics just now. The microbiome in our tummy actually is diversified when a child is being reared in multiple hands.
All right.
So he gets exposure to these germs, and that is how it develops a certain degree of immunity to multiple germs.
That's very interesting.
So वो चीजें मुंह में डालते हैं बचपन में, all of that, यहाँ से उठाया, वहाँ से उठाया. I think.
See, आपने अंगूर मिट्टी से उठाया, झाड़ा, खा लिया. But in the process, you have changed the microbiome of your intestine. And that is how your resistance is going to increase.
Wow.
Now, if you're going to raise a child in the lap of an insecure mother, oh, something is going to happen to my baby. I'm not going to hand him or her over to anybody else. That is when that child is going to go into that psychological bubble and is going to be vulnerable to all sorts of infections, physical diseases, psychiatric disorders.
So if the child's overprotected, obviously that's the kind of issues that the child might face. But sir, there's another debate. Now imagine most of the time when I sit down with my parents, this is exactly what I tell them, that if you ate good food or if you had good genes, I might not have had hair fall or 2 backbone surgeries or this issue or that issue. And they're like, "Hamari khuraak theek thi, tum logon ne theek." So how much do you think genetic predisposition can actually contribute towards your well-being or unfortunately not being well?
Luckily, Shahzad, we are a very interesting being on this earth where genes are like a flute. If you imagine a flute, call that a gene. Now, a flute cannot really produce any sound or music.
Until you blow it.
Or unless the blow. So the blow comes from the environment.
Okay.
So it's an interesting interplay between the flute player, i.e. the environment, and the flute, which is the gene.
Yeah.
So it's a mix of the flute player and the flute.
But sir, if it's a bigger flute, the sound will be different. If it's a smaller flute, you see?
I agree. But at the end of the day, whether it is big, long, short, it requires a certain degree of stimulus or resonance coming from the environment. So it's an interplay.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of stimulus, sir, I think the time is very short and we want to extract as much information as possible, which is the cartoons. And some of the cartoons, they are extremely overstimulating, they are extremely viral. One of them is Cocomelon, and we see a lot of cartoons like that. They have extremely bright colors, and a lot of kids have reported that they are they get extremely irritated if they are, disturbed if the channel is changed. So sir, as a psychiatrist, what sort of recommendations do you give to the kids out there or to the parents out there, how to navigate parenting, modern parenting in these digital spaces? Because obviously social media is a fabric of our life. We cannot disconnect or disentangle. We need to learn to live with that. How to navigate that and how to make sure that our kids are being provided healthy experiences and with the screen time.
Okay, right. So let us first understand that you cannot wish off cartoons and you cannot wish off smartphones from your life. This is a reality. Now let's try and take it into an advantage in our life rather than as a disadvantage. And for that, you have to convert the experience on the screen into a three-dimensional experience.
Right.
And that will only happen if you become the third player as a parent. So you have a joint session where you, the cartoon, and the child are playing in
together.
Three. So then that child is going to become part of a three-dimensional environment. He's going to become the third player. Rather than the only player. See, when a mother hands over the phone to a child and disappears, that is when the child is going to enter a space which is essentially an artificial space. And he cannot or she cannot really make out whether it is truly artificial or not. So he's going to get entangled and lost in that.
So sir, you are a nana now, alhamdulillah.
Yes.
Yes. So how much of all of these techniques do you make sure are being attempted on your Nawasa?
You need to ask them about it. But this is exactly what I try and do.
And how many times does it work?
It always works.
Okay,
you see, it's beautiful. But what happens is that she, my granddaughter, both of them, they would come and sit in my lap and say, okay, let's discuss this story. So there is some story going on and we are interpreting, and we three are listening to that story and discussing this story. So this whole phenomena becomes a three-dimensional experience. And that brings the reality and the fantasy into one word.
And it sparks the imagination and the creativity of the child. Thank you so much, because I do remember when I was growing up, storytelling was an essential part of our childhood, right? We would go to our nana nanis, even our parents, and before going to the bed, they would walk us through some sort of storytelling, and there was so much more. It was a very value-driven storytelling, and that inspired me, and I still think about it, and I think this is one of the best experiences that I had as a child and still cherish, and I would love to pass it on to my kids. Thank you so much, Dr. Saab, for coming here, for shedding light on such an important topic, and we will continue to have a debate and discussion on this topic because it is extremely essential in this modern evolving world.
And for now, Hajra, in addition to this, imagine, because you have actually alluded our conversation towards a modern world, imagine a spoon, with a battery. Now imagine that a battery operated spoon has been developed in Japan to help people reduce salt intake and address health issues like high blood pressure and strokes. Made of plastic and metal, the spoon enhances food's saltness by 1.5 times using a weak electric current to concentrate sodium ions on the tongue, with Japan's average daily salt intake of 10 grams, which is double the World Health Organization recommended limit. Then the electric salt spoon offers 4 intensity levels, promoting healthier eating habits. I don't know.
Are you going to use it? I don't think so.
I think my father already has high blood pressure, so we do not really put a lot of salt in our food. I think all we need to do is just, we are used to it now. I think we go to somebody else's place, and if you are to go, I'd be like, okay.
But that is more a healthier khana. I don't know. We in South Asia are very fond of spices, but we will go on a short break. After we come back, we have a very interesting discussion lined up. Don't go anywhere.
Let's do this.
wonderful, and I'm very glad that we have been joined by a beautiful violinist who is an 8th grader. And does she inspire to become a violinist in the future, or does she have some other plans? We are very glad that we have been joined by Namrah Atif. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Right. So, Namrah, do you want to become a violinist in the future?
I don't really plan to pursue it.
Right.
I'm more interested towards the literature side, like becoming an author or a journalist, towards that side probably.
And which sort of books do you read for that?
I really like reading thrillers and mysteries,
Right.
and sometimes classics as well.
Okay, okay. And which is your favorite author?
My favorite author, that's hard. I really like
You don't have to
Shakespeare.
choose one.
Yeah.
You can, name out a list of that.
I like Jane Austen. Her
Okay.
books are really nice. And
Okay.
Shakespeare.
Okay, okay.
And Charles Dickinson, of course. He's a
Wow.
classic.
Okay,
Wow.
that's a very classic-y thing to read,
Yeah.
right? Because I do remember they were prescribed in a syllabus, and I really never liked or developed a taste for the classics. But Namrah, so now when we talk about the violin, did you learn it? How did you get inspired to learn the violin?
It was my mom. She
Okay.
inspired me. She wanted to play the violin.
Okay.
She did start learning it, but she wasn't able to.
Right.
So ever since then, I want to learn the violin.
Wow.
That's
And while you were playing the violin as well, it looks like as if, you've studied the theoretical part of it as well, because you're studying the scales from there and then playing. Because all of those musicians that we've had over here, we've never seen, because it's more orchestra-like, as if you're playing for the orchestra, they will tell you, give you your scales, you can play that. So why don't you turn it over here for our audiences and share with them that, okay, what scale on the violin will mean what sound, So can you turn it around so that our audiences can see towards the camera? Yeah, and then point it out that, okay, hey, you know what, this is what I'm going to play now, towards this camera, okay? Sorry if I'm confusing you a little bit, but it's perfectly okay. And then now you tell us, okay, that this is the scale that I will play on your violin, so that we can see that, how does it actually work? Because I've always been very fascinated with all of these scales and paper notes coming out for the orchestra, and everybody's playing, and then there's this orchestra leader. So please go ahead, play something for us.
Okay. I'll play Rasputin. You might have heard of it.
Yep, we have. This Rasputin guy was from Russia, right?
Yes.
If I'm wrong. Well, it's so wonderful, imagine that, having such a scale, and that with such an early age. For you to be inspired by your mother is one thing that certainly we really need to kind of applaud for, your parents, that, they actually helped you achieve this goal of yours. How do you think that it has always helped you express your own self?
Well, I really enjoyed practicing and playing songs a lot, especially English songs, because I listen to those a lot. So like when I was upset or when I was happy, I used to play my violin, and like if I was sad, I didn't end up playing very well sometimes. When I was happy, I used to play really well.
Wow.
Do you think that it helps you with your emotions? It has this therapeutic power. It helps you connect from within a deeper down.
It does. Like if I play my songs, I can play them really well because I got a personal connection with them because I listen to them a lot, so I can play them really well too.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think it's great, but one of those, friends you will always have, or khala or phopo would always come and be like, Namrah, yeah, please, ye gana suna do. What is that one song which you always requested to play on your violin?
Despacito.
Despacito? Go ahead, let's listen to Despacito. Despacito. Wow, that was wonderful, Namrah. Thank you so much,
Thank
for
you
being
so
over
much.
here with us today,
Thank you so
inspiring a
much.
lot of children to pick up on a hobby, may it be music, sports, become athletes, do something and express yourself. So it's wonderful for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen. Look after yourselves. And before we actually head out, I'm going to, request you to play one last song, and that is, I don't know if you can or not, Dil Dil Pakistan. Can we do that? All right, so Namrah is going to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, look after yourselves. It's a good morning. Allah Hafiz.
Good
Please,
morning.
go ahead.